I've worked the night shift at the Grandview Hotel for 3 years now. Most people think being a night auditor is boring. Just me, the front desk, and the hum of the ice machine down the hall. But they're wrong. Dead wrong. Because when you work the graveyard shift at a hotel, you see things. Things that check in, but never check out. Things that walk the hallways when they shouldn't. And tonight, I'm going to tell you about the night I learned why room 237 is never, ever rented out. My name is Marcus, and I started working at the Grandview Hotel right after college. The pay was decent, and I liked the quiet. Most nights, I'd sit behind the front desk, finish some paperwork, maybe watch Netflix on my phone. The hotel was built in 1952. One of those old downtown places with Art Deco fixtures and thick carpets that muffled every sound. During the day, it had character. At night, it felt like a different building entirely. My manager, Helen, was the one who trained me. She was in her 60s, been working there since the 80s. On my first night, she walked me through everything. How to run the night audit reports, how to handle late check-ins, where the emergency numbers were posted. Standard stuff. But then, as she was getting ready to leave, she stopped at the door and turned back to me. "One more thing," she said, her voice suddenly serious. "Room 237. It's blocked out in the system. You'll never see it available for booking. If anyone ever asks about it, you tell them it's undergoing renovation. Understood?" I nodded, thinking it was probably just a maintenance issue, maybe a bad pipe or mold problem. Helen stared at me for a moment longer, like she wanted to say more. But then she just pulled her coat tighter and walked out into the November cold. For the first few months, everything was routine. I'd get the occasional drunk guest stumbling in at 3 a.m. or someone needing extra towels. The building would settle and creak, the way old buildings do. I got used to the sounds. The elevator's mechanical whir, the furnace kicking on, the wind rattling the front windows. It all became background noise. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in February, one of those nights where the cold seeps into your bones and won't let go. We only had 12 rooms occupied out of 94. The lobby was dead silent except for the ancient clock on the wall, ticking away the minutes past midnight. I was working on the audit report when I heard it. The elevator. The ding of it arriving at the lobby floor. I looked up from my computer, expecting to see a guest stepping out. Maybe someone wanting ice or asking about breakfast hours. But when the elevator doors slid open, there was no one there. Just the empty car, brightly lit, waiting. I stared at it for a moment, then shrugged it off. Old elevators do that sometimes. Faulty wiring, sensor issues. I went back to my work. 5 minutes later, it happened again. That same ding. I looked up, and again, the elevator was empty. This time, I stood up and walked over to it. I peered inside, checking to see if maybe someone had pressed a button and walked away. Nothing. The elevator was completely empty. I pressed the button to close the doors and send it back up, then returned to the desk. But here's the thing that made my skin crawl. When I glanced at the floor indicator above the elevator, I watched the numbers light up as it ascended. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it stopped. Second floor, where room 237 was located. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. It was just a coincidence. Old building, old elevator, probably just needed maintenance. I sat back down and forced myself to focus on the paperwork in front of me. But I couldn't concentrate. My eyes kept drifting to the elevator, to that glowing number 2 above the doors. Around 1:30 a.m., the phone at the front desk rang. The sound cut through the silence like a knife, making me jump. I picked it up on the second ring. "Front desk. This is Marcus. How can I help you?" There was silence on the other end. Not dead air, but the kind of silence where you know someone is there, breathing, listening. "Hello?" I said again. "Is anyone there?" Then I heard it. A woman's voice. So faint I had to press the phone harder against my ear. "Room 237, she whispered. "I need housekeeping in room 237. My blood went cold. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but that room isn't occupied tonight. Are you sure you have the right room number?" The line went quiet again. And then, just before the call disconnected, I heard her say one more thing. "He won't leave. Please make him leave." Click. The line went dead. I sat there, holding the phone, my hand shaking slightly. I checked the computer system. Room 237 was blocked out, just like it always was. No guest assigned. No reservation. Nothing. I tried to trace the call using the hotel's phone system, but it showed it had come from an internal line. Room 237's line. I should have called Helen. I should have called the police. But I didn't. Something inside me, some stupid need to prove I wasn't losing my mind, made me grab the master keycard and head for the stairs. I wasn't about to take that elevator. Not after it had been making trips to the second floor on its own all night. The stairwell was cold, colder than it should have been. My footsteps echoed off the concrete walls as I climbed to the second floor. When I pushed open the door to the hallway, I was hit by the smell. It was old perfume mixed with something else, something stale and rotten underneath, like flowers left too long in a vase. The hallway stretched out in front of me, dimly lit by wall sconces that cast long shadows. Room 237 was at the far end, past a dozen other doors. I walked slowly, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Most of the rooms on this floor were empty. No light came from under any of the doors. Everything was still, except for room 237. As I got closer, I could see a faint light coming from underneath the door. A flickering light, like a candle or an old TV. I stopped a few feet away, suddenly terrified of what I might find. The door was closed, but I could hear something now. Music. Big band music from the 40s or 50s, playing softly on the other side of the door. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, just listening. The music continued, a woman's voice singing about love and longing. I raised my hand to knock, then stopped. What was I going to say? Who was I expecting to answer? I pulled out the master keycard instead, holding it near the lock. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Before I could swipe the card, the music stopped, just cut off mid-note, like someone had yanked a plug from the wall. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, frozen, waiting for something to happen. And then I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps coming toward the door from inside the room. They stopped right on the other side, inches from where I stood. I held my breath. Every muscle in my body tensed. I waited for the door to open, for something to reach out and grab me. But it didn't. Instead, I heard that voice again. The same woman from the phone call. "Go away," she whispered through the door. "You can't help me. No one can help me. You won't let me leave." "Who won't let you leave?" I managed to whisper back, my voice barely audible. There was a long pause, and then she spoke again, her voice breaking. "My husband. He's been dead for 70 years, but he won't let me go. He says we made a promise. Till death do us part. But death didn't part us. It trapped us here." I stepped back from the door, my mind racing. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of prank. Or maybe I was having a breakdown from too many nights alone in this place. But then I heard another sound. A man's voice, deep and angry, shouting from somewhere inside the room. "Get away from that door, Evelyn. We have a guest coming. We need to look presentable." The woman, Evelyn, let out a sob. "Please?" she begged through the door. "Please help me. He killed me here, in this room, our honeymoon suite. He found out about Richard, and he—" Her voice was cut off by the sound of something crashing inside the room, followed by her scream. Without thinking, I swiped the keycard. The lock clicked green, and I pushed the door open. The room was freezing cold, and my breath came out in white clouds. But what I saw inside made me forget all about the temperature. The room was decorated like it was from the 1950s. Floral wallpaper, a brass bed frame, vintage furniture. And standing in the middle of the room was a man in a suit, his face twisted in rage, his hands around the throat of a woman in a white dress. But they weren't solid. I could see through them, like looking at images projected on smoke. The woman's eyes met mine, wide with terror and pleading. The man turned to look at me, and his face was wrong. It was melting, shifting, like a photograph left in the sun too long. His mouth opened impossibly wide, and he screamed at me. Not words, just a sound of pure fury and hatred. I stumbled backward out of the room, slamming the door shut. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold onto the keycard. I ran down the hallway, my footsteps pounding on the carpet, not caring about the noise. Behind me, I heard the door to room 237 slam open and crash against the wall. I didn't look back. I couldn't look back. I hit the stairwell door at full speed and practically fell down the stairs, catching myself on the railing. When I burst back into the lobby, I was gasping for breath, my heart feeling like it was going to explode out of my chest. I looked at the elevator. The floor indicator showed it was on the second floor. As I watched, it started to descend. Second floor, first floor, lobby. The elevator doors opened with that familiar ding. Inside, standing perfectly still, was the man from room 237. He looked solid now, real, wearing that same suit from the 50s. His eyes locked onto mine, and he smiled. It was the most terrifying smile I'd ever seen. "Good evening," he said in that deep voice. "Checking in for the night. My wife and I would like room 237, please." I couldn't move, couldn't speak. He stepped out of the elevator and walked toward the front desk, his shoes clicking on the marble floor. As he got closer, I noticed details I hadn't seen before. His suit was immaculate, but there was something dark on his hands, something that looked like dried blood. He reached the desk and placed his hands on the counter, leaning toward me. I said. He repeated, his smile never wavering. "My wife and I need room 237. We have a reservation. Anniversary trip. Very special occasion." His breath smelled like decay, like something that had been rotting for decades. I opened my mouth to tell him to leave, to scream, to do something, but no sound came out. Then I heard Helen's voice in my head, her words from that first night. "Room 237 is blocked out. If anyone asks about it, tell them it's under renovation." I grabbed onto that like a lifeline. "I'm sorry, sir," I managed to croak out. "That room is under renovation. I can offer you a different room. We have several available." His smile disappeared instantly. His face darkened with rage, and the temperature in the lobby dropped even further. The lights flickered. The computer screens behind me started to glitch, showing static and scrambled images. "That room is mine," he snarled. "It will always be mine. My wife is waiting for me. She can't leave." I made sure of that. "The room is not available," I said, somehow finding courage I didn't know I had. "You need to leave. Now." For a moment, I thought he was going to reach across the desk and grab me. His hands clenched into fists, and I could see the veins in his neck bulging. But then, slowly, he started to fade. His form became transparent again, and that awful smile returned to his face. "I've been here for 70 years," he said as he disappeared. "I'll be here for 70 more. And so will she, my beautiful Evelyn. Till death do us part." He was gone, leaving nothing but that smell of decay and old perfume hanging in the air. The elevator doors slid closed with a soft ding, and the lights returned to normal. The lobby was silent again, except for that ticking clock on the wall. I stood there behind the desk, shaking, trying to process what had just happened. Then my eyes fell on something that made my blood run cold all over again. There, on the counter where the man had placed his hands, were two perfect handprints, made of dirt and blood. I called Helen immediately, not caring that it was 2 in the morning. She answered on the third ring, sounding groggy. "Marcus, what's wrong?" I told her everything. The elevator, the phone call, what I saw in the room, the man in the lobby. She was silent for a long time after I finished. Then she sighed, a deep, sad sound. "I should have told you the whole story," she said quietly. "Back in 1954, a couple checked into room 237 for their honeymoon. James and Evelyn Mercer. They seemed happy, in love. But on their third night here, the maid found Evelyn's body in the bathtub. She'd been strangled. James was found dead in the same room, sitting in a chair, watching her. Heart attack, the police said. But some of the older staff, the ones who were here back then, they said James looked pleased when they found him, like he'd gotten exactly what he wanted. Since then," Helen continued, "no one's been able to stay in that room. Guests would check in and leave within an hour, terrified. They'd report seeing a woman in a white dress, crying, begging for help. And sometimes they'd see him, James, still dressed in his wedding suit, still claiming that room as his. We sealed it off in the 70s, locked the door and blocked it from the system. But it doesn't matter. They're still there. He won't let her go, and she can't leave without his permission. What am I supposed to do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Helen was quiet for a moment. "Finish your shift," she finally said, "and tomorrow, we'll talk about getting you transferred to the day shift. The night shift at the Grandview isn't for everyone, Marcus. Some people aren't meant to see what walks these halls after dark." I finished my shift that night, but I never went back to the second floor. I heard the elevator make its trips up and down, stopping at the second floor every single time. I heard the phone ring twice more, but I didn't answer it. I knew who it would be. When my shift ended at 7 a.m. and the day staff arrived, I'd never been so happy to see sunlight streaming through the lobby windows. I took Helen's advice and transferred to the day shift. I worked there for another year before finally quitting to take a job at a different hotel across town. But sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about Evelyn, still trapped in that room with the man who killed her, still begging for someone to help her, still waiting for a freedom that will never come. I drive past the Grandview Hotel sometimes. It's still standing there on 5th Street, all 12 stories of it, looking majestic and historic in the daylight. Tourists take photos in front of it. Business travelers check in and out, never knowing what waits on the second floor. The hotel's website boasts about its rich history and vintage charm. But if you look carefully at their room listings, you'll notice something. They advertise 93 rooms, not 94. And if you ever find yourself checking into the Grandview Hotel, and they try to give you a room on the second floor, take my advice. Ask for a different floor. Any floor but the second. Because room 237 might be blocked from the reservation system, but that doesn't mean it's empty. James and Evelyn are still there, playing out the same horrible scene they've been trapped in for 70 years. And if you listen carefully in the dead of night, when the hotel is quiet and still, you might hear it too, the sound of big band music drifting through the walls. the sound of a woman crying, and the sound of footsteps pacing back and forth, in a room that officially doesn't exist. Because some guests check into the Grandview Hotel, but some guests never check out.